I was left in that apartment for 3 days, men I barely knew coming in and out, using me however they wanted.
My name's Sophie Alvarez. I'm 27 now, and I was in that life for about 2.5 years before I finally got out. I still remember what it felt like waking up in my little apartment back in Guadalajara when everything was still normal, or at least what I thought normal was. I'd hit snooze on my crappy old phone a couple times, then drag myself out of bed around 6:30 to get ready for my morning shift at the bar. The place wasn't fancy, just a regular spot downtown where office guys and tourists came for breakfast and beers. I'd tie my hair back, put on the black apron that always smelled like fried food, no matter how many times I washed it, and head out feeling tired, but kind of hopeful, you know? My family wasn't rich or anything, but we had each other. And Dad was a mechanic, always coming home with grease under his nails and stories about the cars he fixed. Mom sold fruits and vegetables at the market. Our house was loud. Lots of cousins, music, big Sunday meals where everybody talked over everybody. I loved it. I was the girl singing in the school choir, the one who actually liked helping the younger kids with their homework. I used to tell everyone I was going to be a teacher someday, working with little ones, maybe first or second grade. That dream felt so real back then. Then Dad died when I was 14. Car accident on the highway. Everything changed after that. Mom was lost. She met this guy pretty quick, my stepdad, and suddenly he was in our house. At first, I tried to stay out of the way. I kept going to school, kept singing, kept telling myself we'd be okay. But he drank. A lot. And when he drank, he got mean. He'd yell, throw things, hit Mom. Sometimes he'd look at me too long or say stuff that made my skin crawl. I never told anybody the full truth about that. Mom knew, I think, but she'd just look away and say, we needed the stability. Stability. That word still makes me sick. My big sister was the only one who really got it. She left for the States right before everything got bad. I missed her like crazy. She'd call when she could, send a little money sometimes, tell me to keep studying. She was my person, you know, the one I could actually talk to. By the time I turned 18, I was working as a waitress full-time while trying to finish my classes at the pedagogical college. The bar job paid okay on good nights, tips from the regulars, free meals sometimes. I'd come home late, feet killing me, but I'd still sit at the tiny kitchen table with my textbooks open, highlighting stuff about child development and lesson plans. I had this little notebook where I'd write ideas for games I wanted to play with future students. It sounds dumb now, but those notebooks made me feel like I had a future. I was scared of a lot of things back then, but mostly I was scared of ending up like Mom, stuck with someone who hurt her just so she wouldn't be alone. I told myself I'd never do that. I'd get my degree, get a real teaching job, maybe even move somewhere better. I had this whole picture in my head, a small classroom with bright colors, kids laughing, me reading stories to them. Life wasn't perfect. Money was always tight. Sometimes I'd have to choose between paying for the bus to school or buying groceries. The stepdad situation got worse, little comments turning into touches that I'd pull away from. I started spending more time at work or studying late at the college library just to avoid home. But I still had hope. I still believed if I worked hard enough, kept my head down, I could make it out the right way. I remember one night after a really long shift, I came home and my mom was crying in the kitchen because he'd hit her again. I sat with her, made her some tea, and promised myself I'd never let a man have that kind of power over me. I was young. I was determined. I thought I knew what survival looked like. Looking back now, I can see the cracks were already there, even if I couldn't admit it. The tiredness that never went away. The way I smiled at customers even when I wanted to scream. The quiet fear that maybe I wasn't as strong as I thought. But at the time, I was just Sophie, a girl from Guadalajara trying to build something better, one tired day at a time. things didn't fall apart all at once. It was more like little pieces started chipping away one after another until I couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. The college tuition was always the biggest headache. I thought I had it figured out with my waitressing shifts, but then they raised the fees for the next semester. Just like that, another 3,000 pesos I didn't have. I tried picking up extra hours at the bar, working doubles most days. I'd get home after midnight, my legs swollen, and still try to study for an hour or two before crashing. Mornings started earlier and earlier. I was running on coffee and sheer willpower. At home, it got worse. My stepdad wasn't even hiding it anymore. He'd make comments right in front of Mom, touch my shoulder or my waist when he walked by. I'd flinch and he'd laugh like it was a joke. Mom would just sigh and say, "Don't make trouble, Sophie. We need the roof over our heads." I started hating her a little for that. I felt guilty about it, but I couldn't help it. I'd lock myself in my room and cry into my pillow, wondering why she chose him over us. The money problems piled up. Rent went up. Then my phone got cut off because I missed a payment. Small stuff at first, like having to skip meals so I could pay for the bus to college. I remember one week I ate nothing but rice and beans for 5 days straight. I told myself it was temporary. Just get through this semester, get the diploma, and everything would turn around. My sister tried to help from the States, but she had her own struggles over there. She sent what she could, but it wasn't enough. I started feeling really alone. The friends I had at college were busy with their own lives, and I was too embarrassed to tell them how bad it was. I'd smile and say I was fine, then go home to arguments and tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. One night after a 12-hour shift, I came home to find my stepdad drunk again. He'd broken my mom's favorite plate set in a fight. She was sitting on the floor, picking up pieces, and something in me just snapped. I yelled at him, told him to get out. He slapped me hard across the face. That was the first time he hit me. Mom didn't say anything. She just kept cleaning up the mess. I went to my room with my cheek burning and realized I couldn't keep living like that. The next few months were a blur of exhaustion. I'd fall asleep in class sometimes. My grades started slipping. One of my professors pulled me aside and said I needed to get my act together if I wanted to finish the program. I nodded like I had everything under control, but inside I was panicking. The debt for tuition was growing. Rent was late. I had to borrow from a coworker just to eat. I kept telling myself I could handle it. I was strong. I'd survived my dad dying, survived the stepdad, survived everything so far. But late at night, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, I started to wonder how much longer I could keep going before something gave. I was so tired. Not just physically, tired in my soul. The dream of being a teacher felt farther and farther away, like it was slipping through my fingers, no matter how hard I tried to hold on. I didn't know what to do. I just knew I couldn't keep living like this. Something had to change. I just didn't know yet how bad that change was going to be. I kept thinking there had to be another way. I applied for every scholarship I could find at the college. I stayed late talking to the financial aid lady until she basically told me there was nothing left. I even asked my manager at the bar for more hours, but he said they were already cutting shifts because business was slow. I tried calling my sister, but she was between jobs herself and sounded stressed. I sat on my bed that night counting the money I had, barely enough for rent and nothing for tuition. The due date was in 2 weeks. For days, I walked around like a zombie, trying to pretend it wasn't happening. I skipped meals again. I sold a couple things, a necklace my dad gave me, some clothes. It wasn't nearly enough. The stepdad situation was getting unbearable too. Every time I went home, I felt sick. Mom kept saying we had to stick together, but I was done. I needed out. I needed to pay what I owed and get some breathing room. That's when my friend Carla pulled me aside after work one night. We'd known each other for a couple months from the bar. She was always dressed nicer, had nicer things. She told me straight up that she sometimes met rich guys who paid really well just to go out, have dinner, talk. No big deal, she said. She saw how tired I looked and said, "Sophie, you're killing yourself for nothing. 1 or 2 nights like that, and your problems are solved." I laughed at first, like actually laughed because it sounded ridiculous. Me? No way. I told her I wasn't that kind of girl. I had dreams. I was going to be a teacher. She just shrugged and said, "Suit yourself." But she planted the idea. It stayed in my head. I tried everything else. I went to a church for help. They gave me some food, but no money. I thought about dropping out for a semester, but that felt like giving up completely. The fear kept growing. What if I lost the apartment? What if I had to go back home full time with him? The thought made me feel like I couldn't breathe. For almost a week, I couldn't sleep. I'd lie there arguing with myself. 1 minute, I'd think, I'm better than this. The next, I'd think about how much easier life could be if I just had the money. I hated myself for even considering it. I felt ashamed just thinking about it, but the bills didn't care how I felt. The due dates kept coming. Carla mentioned it again. A few days later, she said there was this guy who liked sweet, pretty girls like me. Safe, good money, and I could control it. I said no, again. Then the eviction notice came. Just a warning, but it hit me hard. That night I cried so much my eyes were swollen the next day at work. I called Carla. My hands were shaking. I asked her more questions, how it worked, what exactly they wanted. She kept it light, said it was mostly company, maybe some flirting. I told myself it would be just once, just enough to pay the tuition and get stable again. I'd still finish school. I'd still become a teacher. This was just survival. I remember standing outside the bar after closing, phone in my hand, heart pounding. Carla was waiting for my answer. I swallowed hard, looked up at the sky, and said the words before I could take them back. Okay, yes. Set it up. Carla set it up for that same weekend. She told me to wear something nice, but not too much, so I picked a simple black dress I had from a cousin's wedding. My hands wouldn't stop shaking while I got ready. She picked me up in her car and kept talking the whole way, trying to calm me down. Just be yourself. Smile. They like when you listen. I nodded, but my stomach was in knots. The building was one of those fancy high-rises in Polanco, all glass and lights. The doorman didn't even look at me twice when Carla gave the name. We rode the elevator up in silence. My heart was beating so loud I was sure she could hear it. She walked me to the door, gave me a quick hug, and whispered, "You got this," then left. I was alone. A man in his late 40s opened the door. He was shorter than I expected, wearing a nice shirt and cologne that filled the hallway. He smiled, said his name was Roberto, and invited me in. The apartment was huge. Big windows looking over the city, leather couches, a kitchen that looked like nobody ever cooked in it. He poured me a glass of wine right away. I took small sips, even though I didn't really want it. We sat on the couch and talked for what felt like forever. He asked about my life, what I did, if I was studying. I kept it vague, said I worked at a bar and was in school. He told me about his business, how he traveled a lot, how lonely the city could feel. There were long silences where I didn't know what to say. He kept refilling my glass. Eventually, he stood up and suggested we move to the bedroom. The lights were low. I remember noticing how soft the sheets were compared to mine. Everything after that is kind of a blur of nerves and trying to remember to breathe. I just wanted it to be over. Afterward, he was quiet for a minute, then got up and went to his wallet. He counted out the money, more than I made in 2 months at the bar, and handed it to me like it was nothing. "You're sweet," he said. Carla was right. I took the cash, folded it, and put it in my bag without counting it in front of him. I got dressed fast. He called a taxi for me and even gave me extra for the ride. When I stepped back into the elevator, my legs felt weak. The city lights looked the same on the way down, but I felt different. The driver asked if I was okay on the ride home. I said I was tired, that's all. I got back to my apartment around 2 in the morning. I locked the door, sat on my bed, and stared at the money on the table. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt this heavy, quiet emptiness settle in my chest. Like something important had shifted, and I couldn't go back. I cried in the shower until the water went cold, then lay in bed, wondering what I had just done to myself. The first thing that hit me was the money. After that first night, I paid my tuition in full, caught up on rent, and still had some left over. I remember standing in the bank staring at the receipt like it was fake. For the first time in years, I wasn't choosing between eating and paying bills. It felt like I could finally breathe. I started taking more meetings. At first, it was once or twice a week, then more. The clients were different every time: businessmen, a couple politicians, even a guy who owned hotels. One took me to a restaurant where the bill was more than my old monthly rent. I sat there in a dress Carla helped me pick out, eating food I couldn't pronounce, while he talked about his problems like I was his therapist. Another guy flew me to Cancun for the weekend, business class. I'd never been on a plane before. I spent the whole flight touching the leather seats thinking, I can't believe this is my life now. The gifts started coming too. One client bought me a nice watch. Another gave me cash for shopping. I got my first real apartment in a safer neighborhood. Nothing crazy, but clean and quiet. No more listening to my stepdad yelling through the walls. I bought clothes that made me look like I belonged in that world. Heels, nice bags, things I used to only see in magazines. But it wasn't all glamorous. There were weird nights, too. One guy just wanted me to sit with him in his hotel suite and watch him work on his laptop for hours. He paid double. Another asked me to pretend I was his wife at an exclusive dinner with other rich couples. I smiled and made small talk while they casually talked about moving millions around like it was nothing. I overheard things I knew I shouldn't. Business deals, affairs, people joking about things that would get normal people in trouble. They acted like the rules didn't apply to them. I crossed little lines without even noticing, staying overnight when I said I wouldn't, drinking more than I was comfortable with, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. One client wanted me to call him Daddy the whole time. It felt gross, but the envelope he handed me at the end was thick. I told myself it was just words, just acting. My old life started fading. College became something I did when I had time. I missed classes, my grades dropped, but the money made it easy to push that worry away. I sent some cash to my mom too, enough that she stopped asking questions about where it came from. Carla and I got closer. She showed me how to handle the schedule, how to say no to the worst ones, how to keep some boundaries. There were moments that scared me a little, like the night a client got too rough and then cried about his divorce afterward, or when I realized I was checking my phone constantly for new messages, waiting for the next opportunity. The excitement was real, but so was this quiet voice in the back of my head saying something was off. After a few months, it all started feeling normal. Getting ready for these nights, riding in nice cars, waking up with cash on the nightstand. The girl who used to count every peso at the bar felt like someone else. I wasn't living two lives anymore. This was just my life now. And even though part of me knew it couldn't last forever, I wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet. The high didn't last. It never does. At first, it was just little things. A client who wanted me to stay longer than we agreed. Another who got quiet and moody when I checked my phone. I learned fast how to read the room, when to laugh, when to listen, when to act like I was having the best time of my life, even if I was counting the minutes until I could leave. 6 months in, my schedule was completely flipped. I'd sleep until 3 or 4 in the afternoon, then get up, shower, put on makeup, and head out for the night. Days and nights blurred together. I missed my sister's birthday call because I was in a hotel with a guy from Monterey who wanted to talk about his marriage problems until sunrise. I sent her a message the next day saying I was sick. The lies started coming easier. Too easy. I stopped seeing most of my old friends from the bar in college. What was I supposed to tell them? That I was doing consulting work now? One girl from my old program reached out about a group study session. I made up an excuse about family stuff and never followed up. It was easier to just drift away. The clients were all different. There was the older businessman who was actually polite. He'd order room service and ask about my dreams. I made up nice stories for him. Then there was the guy who liked to negotiate everything, even after we were done, trying to pay less because you seemed distracted. I learned to stand my ground, but it drained me. Another one, a younger executive, wanted me to pretend we were on a real date. He held my hand in public and introduced me as his girlfriend at a private event. That one messed with my head more than the others. For a few hours, I almost believed the fantasy. Money was still coming in, but I needed more of it now. The nice clothes weren't enough anymore. The rent on my better apartment was higher. I started accepting bookings I would have said no to before. One night in a fancy suite downtown, the man barely spoke to me the whole time. He just wanted me there while he drank and watched TV. I sat on the edge of the bed for hours, feeling like furniture. When he finally paid me, I felt relieved instead of disgusted. That scared me a little, but I pushed the feeling down. I got really good at compartmentalizing. Delete the messages every night. Have 3 different versions of my story ready depending on who asked. Carry a small bag with cash, charger, mints, and emergency cab money. I'd automatically check hotel room exits and keep my shoes near the door. Little survival habits I didn't even notice I was doing. Holidays were the worst. Christmas Eve. I was in a hotel with a client while my mom texted me pictures of the family dinner. I told her I had to work late. New Year's was another booking. The fireworks from the hotel window looked pretty, but I felt nothing. My old dream of teaching felt like it belonged to someone else. I hadn't been to class in months. The college sent warning letters that I threw away without opening. There were nights that left marks even if nobody hit me. One client, a regular, started getting too comfortable, texting me at all hours, asking personal questions, wanting me to come over with no notice. I made excuses, but I still went sometimes because the money was easy. Another time, I overheard 2 guys talking in the next room about me like I wasn't even a person, just a service. I sat there brushing my hair, staring at my reflection, and realized I barely reacted anymore. My body started feeling like it wasn't really mine. I'd look in the mirror some mornings and not recognize the girl looking back. Nice clothes, tired eyes, fake smile ready to go. I stopped singing, stopped writing in that little notebook about lesson plans. The girl who wanted to work with kids felt like a distant memory. Friends from my old life faded completely. My sister noticed something was off during our calls, but I brushed it off. Mom was happy with the money I sent. Nobody asked hard questions, and I was grateful for that. A year and a half in, I remember sitting in a beautiful rooftop bar with a client watching the Mexico City lights. He was telling me about his vacation home in Europe. Everything around me was expensive and shiny, but I felt flat. The luxury didn't impress me anymore. It was just another night at work. I smiled on cue, nodded at the right moments, and thought about how I was going to spend the money later. That's when it really hit me. I wasn't pretending anymore. This was my normal. The girl from Guadalajara who sang in the choir and dreamed of teaching little kids, she was gone. I had slowly become someone else, piece by piece, and I didn't know how to get her back. I finished my drink, laughed at his joke, and let him take my hand. Another night, another envelope. Just life now. By the time I'd been in that world for about a year and a half, things had already started sliding. The regular clients who used to pay well stopped calling as much. Instead, the same guys started offering me something else, little bags of Crystal and Coke. At first, I said no. Then I tried it once to take the edge off. After that, it got harder to say no. Pretty soon, I wasn't showing up for the money anymore. I was showing up for the next hit. That last stretch is mostly a blur, but one night stands out clear as day. I went to this apartment I'd been to before in a sketchy building on the edge of the city. I thought it was just going to be one or two of the usual guys. They were already there when I arrived, music playing low, bottles on the table. They seemed normal at first, joking around, passing things. I did what I came for and waited for the stuff, but more guys kept showing up. 5, then 7. The vibe in the room changed. They stopped asking. They just took. I remember trying to say I wanted to leave, but my voice sounded small and they laughed it off. Someone turned the music louder. Time got slippery. I don't know how many hours passed. They didn't use protection. They took videos on their phones. I felt hands grabbing too hard, bruises forming, but the need for the next dose was louder than the fear. They left me there. 3 full days. People came and went. New faces, same things. I barely moved from the mattress on the floor. I was dirty, covered in bruises, my body hurting in ways I still don't like thinking about. But mostly I just lay there like a doll, staring at the ceiling, waiting for someone to give me something so the sick feeling would go away. Without it, the thought of getting up and walking out felt worse than staying. I wanted to die. That's not dramatic. That's just what it felt like. I don't remember who finally left the door unlocked or how I got the strength to leave. I just know at some point I grabbed my bag, pulled my clothes on, and stumbled down the stairs. The daylight outside hurt my eyes. The street looked normal, cars passing, people going to work, a lady selling tacos on the corner. Nobody looked at me twice. I must have looked like hell, but the world kept moving like nothing had happened. I walked until I found a payphone and called the only person I could think of who might help without asking too many questions. A young social worker named Elena from one of those street outreach programs. She'd talked to me once before when I was hanging around a bad area. I barely got words out, but she came. She picked me up, didn't lecture me, just got me in her car and drove me straight to a state rehab center. Sitting in that car, shaking, coming down, staring out the window at the city I thought I knew, I finally understood I was done. Completely done. I couldn't lie to myself anymore. If I went back even one more time, I wasn't coming out. That apartment took whatever was left of the girl who thought she was in control. I had sold myself for chemistry until there was almost nothing left. I told Elena I wanted to get clean. I told her I never wanted to go back. And for the first time in a long time, I actually meant it. Getting out wasn't like in the movies. I didn't have one big moment of strength and walk away free. I left that apartment, went into rehab, but even then I tried to run back twice in the first month. The cravings were brutal. My body hurt all the time. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, sweating and shaking, thinking about how easy it would be to make one call and feel normal again. Elena, the social worker who picked me up, stuck with me. She drove me to meetings, sat with me when I cried, and basically wouldn't let me disappear. The first year was hell. I had to change my number 3 times because old clients and acquaintances kept texting. One guy even showed up near the rehab looking for me. I moved to a small town outside Mexico City where nobody knew me. The shelter helped me get a tiny room. I started with the most basic job, cleaning offices at night. My hands were still shaky, and I'd have panic attacks in the middle of mopping floors, remembering things I didn't want to remember. Therapy was hard. I'd sit there and barely talk for weeks. The shame was so heavy. I felt disgusting, stupid, worthless. I kept thinking about my dad, about the little girl who sang in the choir, and I'd cry because I felt like I'd killed her. Group meetings helped some. Hearing other girls' stories made me feel less alone, but it also made me realize how much I'd lost. I had a criminal record now from some of the situations I'd been in. Any hope of teaching was gone. That one still hurts the most. I lost contact with almost everyone from my old life. My mom still doesn't know the full truth. I send her money when I can and keep the conversations short. My sister knows more, but even with her, it's careful. Trusting people again took forever. I'd flinch if someone touched my shoulder. I'd get paranoid in crowds. Normal things like going to the grocery store felt overwhelming. I had to learn how to sleep without pills, how to eat regular meals, how to fill my days without waiting for the next text that meant money or drugs. It's been 4 years now. I'm clean. I work as an assistant in a small kindergarten in a quiet town. I help with the little ones, wiping noses, reading stories, playing games. Some days it feels like a second chance. The kids don't care who I was. They just want someone to listen to them. I also talk to girls who are still in that world when the outreach program asks me. I try to warn them without scaring them away. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. I get it, but I'm not fixed. I still have nightmares. I still catch myself lying automatically about small things. I still can't forgive myself for how low I let it go. I look at the women my age who finish school and have normal lives and feel this deep regret that never really leaves. I lost the chance to be the teacher I dreamed of. That door is closed forever because of the choices I made. I'm 27. I live simply. I have my little apartment, my routines, and the kids at the kindergarten. Some wounds have healed, some never will. I still carry the weight of those years, but I'm here. I'm breathing. I'm no longer that empty shell waiting for the next dose. If you're listening to this and you're in something that's slowly destroying you, I won't tell you it's easy to leave. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do, but you're worth it, even when you don't believe it. Even after you've gone lower than you thought possible, I went to sell my body to survive, and in the end, I sold myself for the drugs until only an empty shell remained. I'm still trying to find all the pieces I lost. Some days I do. Most days I just keep going, and that has to be enough.